let's finally let's talk about the Labour UK government in terms of its the ICC case against Israel for the genocide.
Yeah, this is something we mentioned on last week's show, mentioning that it had been reported that the new government of Britain, with the new Labour government of Britain, would drop the previous government's um, objections to the case in the ICC against Israel for war crimes. And it was reported in the Israeli media this week, and we've got a story here from Middle East Eye reporting on that report, that that would not be the case, and they backtracking on this decision to drop their British government's objections to ICC arrest warrants. And what was reported in Israeli media in Ma'ariv was that the new foreign minister, David Lammy, who you can see here in this photo on the left, had promised the Israeli government during his visit to Israel, his first visit this week, that he would not be dropping that objection, and that they would be carrying on. And so we can see that the new Labour government is basically carrying on with the same policies as the Tory government.
I actually predicted this last week. I said I would be very surprised if Labour did actually drop its objections. There's a couple of things here to say. One is that according to this Middle East Eye report and other reports, there was not just direct pressure from Israel, as David Lammy, the new Labour Foreign Secretary of the UK, went to Israel and met with Netanyahu, but also there was pressure from the United States. And if we look back at, and you'd wonder, why would the Labour government care what the United States says? Well, I mean, that's a question that answers itself. But if we look at this story from the Washington Post, Tamara, that's actually from 2019, when Jeremy Corbyn, a lifelong supporter of Palestinian rights, was leader of the Labour Party and had a real prospect of becoming prime minister had he not been sabotaged by the right wing of his own Labour Party, as well as the whole British establishment. But this is a reference to Mike Pompeo, who was then Secretary of State for the Trump administration, who suggested that the United States would take action, possibly to go far as preventing Jeremy Corbyn from becoming prime minister if he won an election. And there are some quotes there from the article, again from 2019, that Pompeo weighed in on British politics during a closed-door meeting with Jewish leaders, saying he would not wait for Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn to become prime minister of Britain to push back against him or any future actions he might take against Britain's Jews. Again, this is feeding the fake anti-Semitism narrative. During his meeting with Jewish leaders in New York, Pompeo was asked, if Corbyn is elected, would you be willing to work with us to take on actions if life becomes very difficult for Jews in the UK? In response, Pompeo said, quote, "It could be that Mr. Corbyn manages to run the gauntlet and get elected. It's possible. You should know we won't wait for him to do those things to begin to push back. We will do our level best." End quote. And those are very significant and weighty words, coming not just from a US Secretary of State, but a former head of the CIA, as Mike Pompeo was. And recall that he publicly boasted about how, as head of the CIA, they were organizing coups and sabotage and subversion all over the world. He actually laughed about it. And then the other thing is, there's some breaking news that I just found when looking. And Tamara, I'm going to drop this into the chat. This story is from the Jewish News Syndicate, which is a pro-Israel website. And I'm just seeing this now. It's dated July 17th, and it says, the International Criminal Court of The Hague is expected to issue arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant within the next 2 weeks, according to Israel's Channel 14. And if you don't know, Channel 14 is considered to be a very pro-Netanyahu, a specifically pro-Netanyahu channel in Israel. The article continues, Israel had bargained that an unofficial agreement with Britain's previous conservative government would derail the ICC effort, the report said. So I don't know. It said that the reports are contradictory as to whether the Labour Party will drop the challenge. What we can say, I mean, we can't confirm any of this. I just saw this. But what we can say is that this at least tells us that Israel is extremely worried. And of course, even if the British don't drop their challenge, that doesn't mean that the ICC has to care about what the UK thinks. So this issue is still there, and it's not going to go away for Israel, even if Labour continues its policy, continues the policy of the previous Conservative government.
And Ali, just remind us what happened. Like, let's say that the International Criminal Court does issue arrest warrants for these Israeli leaders. What happens next? Is it a universal jurisdiction sort of arrangement where anywhere they are in the world, they can be and should be arrested and brought to The Hague? What happens?
So yeah, just to remind people, back a month or two ago, when it was, I don't time is
Yeah.
warped, so I don't remember the exact date. But Karim Khan, who is the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, announced his intention to seek arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the Prime Minister and Defense Minister of Israel, in connection with crimes against humanity and war crimes in Gaza. The way the International Criminal Court works is that the prosecutor doesn't have the power himself to issue those arrest warrants. What he does is he makes the request to a panel of judges, and the judges then deliberate and decide whether or not to issue the arrest warrants. Historically, this has been a formality. Usually the judges, I don't know off the top of my head if they've ever denied an arrest warrant, but typically the prosecutor will have done his or her homework and the judges will approve the arrest warrants. That process may take weeks or up to 2 months. What happened in this case is that the British government, the previous Conservative government, lodged an objection, and that slowed the whole thing down. And so now the question is whether the court will have to slow down its process, hear that objection, and set everything back, or whether it will be withdrawn and proceed. So if and when the arrest warrants are issued, every country, every state that is a party to the Rome Statute, the founding document of the International Criminal Court, will be obligated to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu or Yoav Gallant if they set foot on their territory, and that's most of the world's countries and all of Europe and Canada. The notable exception is the United States. They would be able to travel to the United States without fear of arrest, but they couldn't go to Canada, they couldn't go to France, they couldn't go to the UK, all these countries that are closely allied with Israel. And in fact, even Germany, which is a major partner in this genocide, announced at the time that Karim Khan said he was seeking the warrants, that if the warrants were issued and if Netanyahu or Gallant set foot on German soil, they would be obligated to comply with the warrants and arrest them. Norway and several other countries made the statement. So it would be a major blow, and the effect would be wider than just Netanyahu and Gallant, because, the court has said, or the prosecutor has said, that we're still actively investigating and more warrants are likely to be issued. But even in the absence of that, this would set such a precedent. It would be such a break in the wall of impunity that Israel has had, that no Israeli soldier, no officer, no Israeli official or politician would feel safe traveling to any country for fear of arrest, either under an international warrant or under universal jurisdiction, which is separate. Universal jurisdiction is the principle where countries can prosecute international crimes like genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes in their own domestic courts. These are considered crimes of such gravity that countries can take them on in their own domestic courts, as has happened, by the way, in the case of certain Syrian officials being convicted in various courts in Europe, I think particularly Germany, for example. So it would really tighten the squeeze on Israel significantly. Whether it's enough to force them to stop the genocide, nothing has so far, but it would certainly be a real tightening of the screws.
Yeah. Well, a lot more to watch on that front, obviously.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.